I, male, 57, and my wife Sandra, female, 56, never had any children together. Sandra has a daughter, Holly, female, 33, from her previous relationship. I entered Holly's life when she was 6, and she considers me to be basically her father. Her bio dad is absent, and we don't even know where he is right now. Her dad's absenteeism plus the early age at which I entered her life had created a really strong bond between us. I even walked her down the aisle when she married her fiance, Josh. But their marriage became quite strained and early on due to their different perspectives on careers. Holly is very ambitious and has the brains to back it up. She works in software development and is considered an expert in her field. She loves her career and would never want to give it up. However, Josh has a really weird mindset about working, which came out of the woodwork after their child was born. He was active in favor of Holly working when they didn't have a kid, especially considering that her job netted about 4 times of the income he brought in. They enjoyed trips out together, spent on comforts, and even paid off their first house before Holly turned 30. But when Bryant, male 6, was born, Josh started to act really finicky about the whole who'll take care of the baby question. From the story, I know they had decided on raising their child while both of them continued to work and would pay for a nanny or a helper of some kind. But Josh started to change his mind. He wanted Holly to quit her job and become a permanent stay-at-home mom. She obviously declined as it was unfair to her, and unfortunately, that was when their marriage came apart. When Brian was 2, his parents separated and Holly got full custody. The thing was, even though Josh wanted a parent to stay home and raise their kids since it was natural, he was terrible at parenting and woefully unprepared. Holly, despite not making it her priority, was still able to do right by her kids. We supported her through this tough time, and it was rough on everyone, but at the end of the day, it felt like it was for the best. Josh got his wires crossed when it came to parenting. Due to how messy the divorce was, Holly lost the house in the divorce and for the next 2 years lived in an apartment in New York City with Brian and did her best to juggle work and parenting. She did have a nanny, but that wasn't helping out in the long term. She also started seeing someone who also had a kid from their previous relationship. Brian was too young to understand, but it was clear that Holly was slowly getting integrated into this new guy's family and losing touch with her own son. Mark, her new boyfriend, was also ambitious and career-oriented like her, and both of them were planning on moving in together and starting a business. His daughter, Cindy, female 10, was a bit older than Brian and could have helped out with raising him a little. However, Holly also felt like bringing Brian along and raising 2 kids while working at the level they were would be unsustainable. So she reached out to her mom and asked if we could take care of Brian for the foreseeable future. Sandra and I reeled at this idea. I mean, why did Brian deserve to be abandoned? We asked her to reconsider, but Holly was adamant that she was making the right choice. She said, "If you guys can't work it out, I'll ask Josh to take Brian. He knows him, and I'm sure he'll learn to take care of him eventually. I don't mind signing over my custody rights or maybe agreeing to split custody." When I said that idea was completely insane, she hurtfully told me that I'm not her dad, and I just shut down the confrontation then and there. Giving Brian to Josh was infinitely worse than having Brian with us because Josh had basically gone to shit after the divorce. We ran into him once at a local bar and he was not doing well, partying, drinking, and deep in debt. I would not allow my grandson to live in such an environment. Despite our misgivings, we allowed Holly to leave her son with us and go focus on her business. It's been years since then, and Brian has grown into an amazing little man. Holly comes by and visits maybe once every 2 months, and I can tell that the kid finds it tough to deal with his mom being gone for so long. Despite that, Holly still keeps making excuses about work and the amount she has on her plate, despite Mark's daughter living in their house. Because of the dynamic that she has created and the obvious hurt it's causing my grandson, I don't speak that much with Holly, while Sandra keeps a little more in touch with her. Recently, we got an invite from Holly to a party in the Hamptons where she was buying a house. Sandra gave me some info, and apparently Mark and she had sold their business for millions and were now looking at moving to a bigger place and starting their next venture. Sandra was proud of this, and even I found it impressive, but I have to know, where does Brian fit into all this? He's just turned 6, and I feel like he's going to grow up and resent his mother unless she makes him a part of this life that she's building. I made this clear to Sandra and also said that I wouldn't go to the party unless she tells me what she was planning to do with Brian. Because guess what? She asked us to drop Brian off at a babysitter instead of bringing him with us to meet her. And that just rubbed me the wrong way. Sandra feels like I should have at least come to the party, as it's clear Holly wants both of us there. But I won't move an inch unless I get a response from her about her child. AITA? Update 1. So Holly knows the reason why I'm not going, and she called me personally to talk about it. She opened up about how she always felt trapped in the relationship with Josh and was forced into having a kid by his constant needling. Sandra knew about this already, but had kept it from me, as it was Holly's place to tell me. On the call, Holly also told me that she suffered from PPD, and that severely hampered the time she had with Brian in the first year of his life. When I told her that I empathized with her, but felt like her kid deserved a chance to be loved by her, she didn't know how to respond. I said, "Listen, I know it was hard, but he's still your blood. Do you really think you'll be able to explain to him why you've abandoned him like this? Do you really not love him?" And that made her cry. It felt bad to make, basically, my daughter cry, but I still couldn't accept her understanding of this situation. I told her that I wasn't ready to accept that my grandson will not know my daughter, and even if she couldn't accept him into the family, it felt unfair that Mark and his daughter were so close to her. Holly explained why that was the case by saying she always thinks back to her time with Josh and the forced nature of it all when she thinks of her son. She knows this is unfair to him, but it's a big mental block she really can't get past. After the call, I feel like nothing has changed, and the party is next week. Sandra said that she needs to go to support her daughter. This party has created a lot of tension between us, and she's been quite icy with me. I just don't understand how she can love Brian and be okay with this. Update 2. I've been reading a lot of your comments, and I want to thank the people who've told me about motherhood and how complex it can be. I still feel like Brian deserves to be in the care of his mom, and I think that as he grows older, he is going to resent his mother for basically having no reason to leave him with us. And that irks me. But I also realize that I can't force my stepdaughter to take back my grandson, so the best thing I could honestly do is give him an amazing childhood. Sandra and I are old, but we've been holding our own when it comes to raising this little fella. And Holly has often sent us funds to make sure that Brian gets everything he needs. I think I'll call Holly and ask her if Brian can come with me to the housewarming. I am willing to go to the party and celebrate her success, but I also need to speak with her in person about what I feel about this issue. She said that she's okay with that and hopes that I can understand her point of view and truly why she can't parent Brian right now. Update 3. So I came back from the party yesterday, and a lot of things about Mark and Holly's dynamic have been shown to me. First off, Mark does most of the parenting for his kid, and the girl mostly treats Holly like a roommate who has to be respected more than anything else. Secondly, I got to look at Holly's priorities and how she works day to day. The girl is almost like a machine. Even though they've sold their business, she's on call 24/7 with contacts and people she is mentoring. And it takes up a huge chunk of her day. It is impressive and she's leaving an impact on the world, but it almost seems like she's going to wear herself out. Mark and I also got to know each other, and he's a nice guy. He seems to take up the role of the caretaker in the house, and he even became quite close to Brian. They got along well, and he revealed to me that he wouldn't mind having Brian be a part of his family. But at the end of the day, he wants Holly to be okay with it too. The party was lovely, and as we were cleaning up together, I spoke to Holly about my feelings and everything I've expressed in the last few updates, and she understands where I'm coming from as well. However, she does not think, even now, that she could form any real bond with Brian. After a lot of back and forth, we agreed to disagree, and Sandra and I will continue to raise Brian. However, Holly has promised to be more active in his life, to visit more, and at least to try to form a connection with him. Brian is still too young to be drastically harmed by this, and he loves staying with us, but to me, it's still a little alien. However, I know Holly would never be cruel on purpose, and I understand where she is coming from. It's for the best. NTA, and I feel like Holly is avoiding a major responsibility in her life. I don't think she's a bad person, but she's making a bad choice. She's going to realize later that a human relationship is worth more than the priorities she has right now. NAH, I think Holly is probably holding back on telling you how bad her relationship was with Josh and how psychologically damaging it was for her. So she needs to process everything at her own pace, and I think her threatening to give Brian to Josh means that she has made some connection between them implicitly. She needs help, and Brian needs to grow up in a stable home with two loving parental figures. Next story. I'm 26, female. My wife, 25, female, and I have been together 10 years. I've seen in post comments, this is a deal breaker or leave them. And I'd like to preemptively ask for people to not say this. In any case, it's a minor argument. I'd had a few friends around. One of my friends was in his first ever committed relationship. We're all super happy for him. He mentioned that he's having problems sharing a bed with her. She kicks. This led to a few of my friends laughing and sharing a few stories of their own. I did join in and said that sometimes sleeping next to my wife was like sleeping next to an old lady, but I didn't really go much into details other than mentioning she drools, not a problem. In reality, it's that she's diabetic, type 1, and whilst normally in range, when her sugars are high, she's up and down every 5 minutes for the loo. This is personal. Didn't say it to my friends. They don't need to know. It's just gotten worse since we had a baby because now bathroom and baby keeps me awake. I suppose she overheard because she got super pouty, said she didn't appreciate the joke, and that she'd sleep elsewhere since I didn't want to share with Grandpa. I may have laughed at that. Wrong thing to do. I apologized and mentioned that my friends were sharing stories, and honestly, what I said wasn't overly embarrassing. She said, I don't care. I'm not their partner. I apologized again. She said she'd sleep elsewhere, but I'm sleeping on the sofa, so she doesn't have to. Ironically enough, though, she's still proving my point as the baby has yet to cry, but she's up and down for the loo, like an old person. I may have backtracked on my apologies by saying good night, Grandpa, but I had apologized twice by then. She's made a little jabs about our relationship jokingly to her sister, and I've never said a word because it's a joke. I honestly don't think I'm this much of an AH in this situation. AITA? Yes, because a diabetic pregnant woman doesn't want to be referred to as an old woman by her partner's friends. You do understand that pregnant women are already in a tough situation and aren't going to be receptive to mocking by their partners who aren't going through the body changes that they are, right? Wow, seriously, YTA. So let me get this straight. You made a comment to your friends about sleeping next to an old lady, but couldn't explain the reason for the comment because it's too personal? By your own admission. Yeah, dude, YTA. Your reasoning for this was because she struggles with incontinence due to her having a baby and frequent urination due to a medical condition. Oh, and drooling. It's fair she doesn't want this broadcasted and is likely insecure, sensitive about these facts. Best response in this scenario is, yeah, it takes getting used to sharing a bed. Wife and I still go through waves of struggle not having our own space. Honestly, may I suggest separate bedrooms? It's more common than most people think and could solve some issues in your marriage. Next story. I, 45, male, have a cousin, 32, female, who I'm not close to. In fact, in the past 5 years, we texted each other once. We also come from a very small family. She and I are the last kids. Besides us, there's only 4 other people left. I'm not close to our grandfather either. I moved away when I was 20 and have seen him twice in that time and haven't seen him at all since our grandmother passed. Several years ago, my cousin married someone of a different race and had kids. I don't have a problem with any of this, and to be honest, I don't even think about her or her family, so you can say I'm indifferent to the entire thing. However, our grandfather is super racist. He thinks it's an abomination, so he cut her and her family completely out of his will. He even cut out her mother, his daughter, because she supported the marriage. He told them what he was doing and told them several other things I can't put here. They haven't spoken to each other since the day. Recently, he had a health scare and had to stay in the hospital for a few weeks. My mom, his other daughter, took care of him and because of his advanced age is working with his attorney to put things in order. This is when the inheritance issue resurfaced because he really did disinherit my aunt, cousin, and that entire family. This means the only people left in his will are me, my mom, and 2 others. My cousin, aunt, and their family have been trying to rally us to stand against our grandfather to either change his will or for us to denounce his inheritance because it's the right thing to do. The thing is, I don't want to because I need the money. I don't have to agree with his world views, but I have bills to pay, and with the predicted economy downturn, his money will be a safety net if I lose my job. I told my cousin all of this and she thinks I'm a racist AH. I tried telling her I'm not and I just care about the money. She said if that's the case, I should stand with her to force him to change his will. I don't think it'll work out like she has it in her head. By the way, we're not talking about millions and I'm not going to be able to play tennis with Elon Musk at the country club. It'll just be a nice safety net for several years if I lose my job and can't find a new one. AITA for choosing my inheritance? First, your grandfather is clearly a huge a-hole. You are a bit of an a-hole for just telling your cousin, sorry, but I need the money. The right thing to do is for all involved to sit down and commit to cousin and family that you will share the money as it would have been had they not been disinherited. Put it in writing. But for God's sake, don't tell Grandpa. Trying to force Grandpa to change his will ain't gonna work. It'll just get the whole pile donated to some racist organization instead. Take the money, but do right by your cousin and make sure they all know it. Your cousin can't force your grandfather to change his will, neither can you. Neither can your mother. Nobody can. And do not plan your future based upon an inheritance. You don't know what will happen to your grandfather's estate between now and when he passes. He may end up leaving a fortune or leaving a mountain of debt. Your grandfather is a racist a-hole and you're a bit of one for enabling him. However, at his advanced age, the likelihood that you would be able to change his opinion is negligible. But allowing his behavior just for money is really unsettling, OP. NTA, forget about the racism angle and political correctness and all that. Do not let yourself get dragged into somebody else's shit. Do not make sacrifices for causes you don't believe in because somebody wants to take your money and turn it into their money. You don't know what happened here. Maybe, or even probably, your cousin had this talk with Gramps before she got married, and he told her he would cut her out if she did. She went ahead and married the love of her life, and good for her. That's the proper life decision. But now she wants you either give her half of your inheritance or forfeit it all because she's not happy about being cut out. None of you knows what the will is going to say. Maybe she's out. Maybe she's in. Maybe he's leaving it all to the KKK. Just go on living your life. Stay tuned for more stories from Argo Relationships.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. "Meetings should be for employees only." Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.